Reports in the past week show that while the revenue generated by the Nigeria Railway Corporation in the last year was 1.13 billion, the organization requires an additional 61.5 billion for maintenance and operational expenses, bringing the sustainability of rail services and Nigeria's infrastructural development at large into focus. Joining us now to speak on deliberate policies needed for sustainable development is the Managing Director of Lekki Worldwide Investments Limited, Dr. Tunde Sodade. Doctor, you're welcome to the morning show.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you
Good
around.
morning.
Morning.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I mean, infrastructural development is key. It's been on the lips of everybody in Nigeria, especially in those in government. And one key area that they've been talking about is, we've revived the rails. We're doing a lot more. We're connecting Niger. We're now in Abeokuta and in Ibadan from Lagos, etc. But then the cost and the efficacy of what has been achieved so far, are issues that Nigerians are still trying to grapple with. Recently, I think about last week or 2 weeks ago, the popular filmmaker Tunde Sodade, reported something on his Facebook, saying something about the unsavory development in terms of ticketing, etc., when you try to, join the rail from Abeokuta to Lagos State. What would be your own personal assessment of where we are and what do you think that we have achieved and in what manner, so far, zeroing down first on the rail services and then generally on infrastructural development?
Okay. Thank you so much. Quite loaded, but I'll have a go. Well, I think we're at a good place. At least we realize that we need to develop infrastructure in this country to move things forward, especially to revamp our economy. To a very large extent, I feel that that is not enough, because there are certain key questions that one would normally ask.
That's right.
Who are you building the infrastructure for? And I see infrastructure being built around us that the people may not be able to afford. It's not anybody's fault as such. It's just that I think that we will need a little bit more restructuring, especially in our labor force, our human capital. Because if you have infrastructure that the masses cannot afford to pay economic fares and toll on, then you're pushing the pressure back onto the government unwittingly.
To subsidize.
Yeah, to subsidize. And if we subsidize a highway, we subsidize a railroad, we subsidize power, the government will suddenly find themselves full of liabilities. And it will be a struggle, especially against the background and context of where we are, our macroeconomy is. So yes, it's a good thing that we have realized that infrastructure development is important, but I think that we have to begin to think a little bit outside the box and to recognize that there is actually a very strong link between disposable income, unemployment levels, and the success of infrastructure development efforts.
Understood. If we look at the life cycle of these projects from conception, construction, operations, and then the sustainability, where do you think the bleeding is? Where do you think the buck stops when it comes to the situation we find ourselves in?
I think it starts with the conception and the planning, making sure that the particular piece of infrastructure that you're interested in is properly planned and justified. And justification can be a little bit difficult because human beings are at the helm of this, and there tends to be biases and emotional attitudes around whether I should build a road from my mother's hometown to my father's hometown, or whether I should build a road from a source of production that will ease the coming to market of the products and produce. So it's very, very important to be able to plan, do a proper business case,
Yes.
and to be as objective as possible, right? Usually it's easy to take your cue from what the national objectives, strategic objectives of the nation may be at that point in time. So that whenever you come up with a decision to make, you have to try and align that decision with the strategic objectives of the nation. So I think the real work is at the front end. You set the tone, you decide, you prove viability, feasibility, you decide who are you building it for. You see, a lot of the times we have infrastructure that we build, and a big part of the value-added effort is foreign. The design is made abroad. So, dollar out of the window. The contractors come, they're foreign. You find out that in a lot of cases, the top 10 employers of a foreign company earn more than the next 200 Nigerians. These are the things that we really have to look at. And to be able to deal with a lot of these things, there's a lot of intertwining of MDAs that have to work together. So when you have a well-planned project, you set the tone, then you can move into implementation. And by the way, at the front end, you're already looking at things like, okay, so this is how we're going to construct, this is how we're going to operate it, and this is how we're going to ensure that this thing is sustained into the future. So I think that's where the work is. Unfortunately, this is where we're very weak. And again, if I may, I would say that we don't have a tradition in Nigeria of having to justify big spends like this. Because back in the day, we were flush with funds, and going back to the days when money was not the problem, was what to do with it. You know, back in the day, money was flush, so it was easy for the government to write a check and say, I want to build Eco Bridge, or write a check and say, I want to build National Stadium. But today, they can't do that now. So whatever it is we want to do, we have to make sure that it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's the area where I like the fact that you said, you know, on the one hand, justification, and then on the other hand, affordability.
Yes.
But that's something that will always crop up. And then it brings into focus the core responsibility of government. In a country where minimum wage is 30,000 and people struggle to pay, states struggle to pay, federal government possibly are borrowing, you know, to pay. And then you're bringing in infrastructure. The cost of taking a train from Lagos to Abeokuta or to Ibadan, it's like if you have to do that on a daily basis, it means that somebody who is below level 8 cannot be working in Lagos and be living in Abeokuta and be taking the rail, or living in Ibadan, which is the opposite of what you find, you know, abroad.
Yes.
You know, you work in London, but you live in Leeds or in Leicester, you know, or you know, something. That's the whole point, because you can't afford to stay in town.
Yes.
So decongest the town. So there's a deliberate effort to say government, because it's a social cost, a social infrastructure. If government will have to proceed, as this government has done in 6 years, you know, hammering on infrastructure, and then the populace can't afford it, what's going to bridge the gap?
Okay, excellent question. There's a chicken and egg thing here. So it all boils down to productivity,
Okay.
right? And the ability of the worker to actually work for his pay.
Yeah.
I think personally that wage levels are very low, right?
Very.
But I also think that the reason why wage levels are low is because the workers are poorly skilled, right?
Majority of them.
Yes. And this is why I say human capital development is extremely important.
You're a major advocate of
Yes.
that.
You know,
Yeah.
we have to, starting from even the MDAs, you talked about level 8.
Yes.
We have to put them in a position where their output can be measured and will be enhanced. I don't see why anybody who has a degree or two would settle for less than economic wages, right? And this spirals into work attitudes and things like that. We won't go into that, right? But I feel very strongly that there's a lot of work to be done. And the work that has to be done is to build up our human resource pool to a point where they are doing what the man that lives in Coventry and wants to work in London can do, because he can afford it. When you look, if you follow the money, you can see quite a little bit of stories being told. So when you see, for example, a bridge being built, any state, any federal now, usually what you're going to find is that when you get to the Federal Ministry of Works and you want to build something, they're going to tell the foreign guy, you go and design it for us. Design it for us. Okay, so how much is it? So how much is it? And okay, come and build it. And there's very little input, even though the Ministry of Works might have 300 engineers working in there. They've been disenfranchised over the years.
Who are well trained, who probably trained abroad too.
Yes,
as good as those that you
but they don't have the tools. So somebody is going to come and tell you that bridge is going to cost you $1 million, and you don't even have the ability on your side of the table to value engineer, to take a critical look at what they've done, to even decide whether do we really need this. I mean, the anecdote about the airport being built complete with snow plows and things like that. And they don't care. But if we bother to, first of all, give them the equipment. A long time ago, I visited, when Federal Secretariat had just started, I visited a relative there who had just come from America, an architect. And I was extremely blown. I was a young boy then at the kind of equipment I saw. I'd never seen lighting like that in my life. Wow. And the tables and and this man was very proud of his office. But this was a long time ago. Now, if you walk into a technical department, anyone, you find that they don't even have the tools to work with. So give them the tools to work with. Train them. We have to, right? We have to train. They're our first line of defense in this matter.
Yes.
Right? Train them properly, bring them up to speed, and then look at the other side of the equation, the man on the street.
Yes.
Put him to work. And I believe that a lot of what you're asking will fall into place.
All right, Dr. Sodade, we'll just go on a quick break now. And when we return, we'll come back to you so that you can expand more, on this topic.
Okay.
Do stay with us. We'll be right back. You're welcome back to the morning show here on the Rice News. And we're still on with Dr. Tunde Sodade, the MD of Lekki Worldwide Investments Limited, sharing perspectives with us on Nigeria's infrastructural development and challenges. So, Doctor, we were discussing on, you touched on the point about training, which is a key thing. But I'd like us to move to a slightly different aspect, which I believe concerns you very well, the Lekki corridor and the enormity of the infrastructural development that surrounds it. The Dangote refinery, the petrochemicals. As a matter of fact, the CBN governor, Dr. Emefiele, said that the CBN is basing its projections in terms of, dollars, floating dollars, etc., on, the Dangote petrochemicals and refineries coming up, because about 40% of what we spend on FX, goes into importing fuel, etc. So if the refinery comes on stream, hopefully, as we're planning to, by next year, that will reduce the demand on dollars, etc. But then in terms of infrastructural development, that's the area where you operate. How much of pressure do you think that corridor, as lucrative as, people tell me, if you buy a plot of land around Lekki, around, your Lekki free zone at 2.5 million, in less than a year, it's almost 7.5, stuff like that. But then it comes with pressure, especially when all these Dangote things come on stream. How are you dealing with that? How should residents and those who probably might be looking, in that direction in terms of investment, consider Lekki. And by Lekki, I'm not talking about Lekki 1 and 2.
Phase 1 and 2, the roundabouts here.
Okay. There's always a cost to growth, and development.
Yeah.
And a lot is being done. I was talking about how much work you need to do at the front end, right? I mean, there are times when you could actually spend 2 years on paper and 9 months on the site, right? That happens in some instances. So not only are you talking about the Dangote, you have the deep sea port.
Deep sea port.
That's also coming up, and that's coming up on stream by the end of next year. It's going to be the deepest port on the West African coast. So you can imagine what is going to happen there. The government, the state government, I'm sure if you talk to our governor, Sanwo-Olu, I'm sure it keeps him up all night. We're working tirelessly. The Ministry of Works through the SA.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work and considering going on paper, negotiating with contractors, investors. There's a network of roads. So let me put everybody's mind at rest first. So there's a network of about 4 roads, right, that we're working on that will come on stream.
From where to where?
Okay, so there's obviously the coastal road is what everybody sees.
Yes.
That's the road, the main road. It's going to be widened. I think that...
At the Lekki Expressway you're talking about, when you talk about the coastal road?
No, the coastal road, when you go down the Lekki Expressway, you turn right at a place called Eleko Junction.
Yes.
And then that is actually the coastal...
That's the Amen Estate.
Yeah, the Amen Estate.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you turn left. And that takes you to the free zone,
Yes.
the port and everything, right?
So Lacampine Tropicana all the way down.
Lacampine Tropicana. And that road is being worked on right now. It actually has the attention of some of the major investors, including Dangote.
To expand it?
Yes, to expand it.
Wow, that'd be great.
Yes. So that will happen. So the one you talk about, Adefemi, the Lekki Expressway, if you come towards the zone, you'll see that there's a lot of work being done from Abraham Adesanya, Aja, all the way up. That is also being revamped. There is a road that will come on stream a bit later, and that is what you may describe as the 7th Axial Road. Okay. That road goes up north, right? Because we realize that about 70% of the cargo that comes into Lagos is destined for outside Lagos, right?
Oh,
so
more than 70% actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that road right now is in the very early stages of being planned, right? And it's going to actually take traffic away from Lagos over the Ekpe Lagoon, right? And it's going to land on the Ijebu-Ode or Expressway, and hopefully maybe at some point go on to join the Ikorodu-Abuja Expressway.
Not the fourth mainland.
No, not the fourth mainland
bridge.
No, not the fourth mainland. That's why I say 7th. It will be the 7th mainland bridge because of its distance.
Wow.
If you want to call it that.
Wow.
So that's how. So there's quite a bit of planning, and also there's a rail evacuation.
I was going to touch on that.
Also in play.
Okay.
Where you're going to have rail services that will evacuate goods and passengers to secured, bonded facilities. So there's a lot that is going on. But then, we have to realize that all this has to be balanced with providing healthcare, providing education, making sure that all the other promises of government are met. So a lot of collaboration is required. And you are collaborating sometimes. Half of the team are in China, then in America, they're all over the place, But rest assured, it will get a bit worse. But at the end of the day, it's going to get better.
I mean, you touched on the governor of perhaps seeing all of this development, seeing all of this potential, and it's still being very cumbersome and stressful, I'd imagine, because the topic of this conversation is talking about other examples of infrastructural development that haven't made financial sense. So where we have this huge development happening in and around the Lekki Free Zone, I mean, in terms of the lessons learned, what moves are being made to make sure that in a few years we won't be talking about those developments in the same way?
You see, I can talk about what I have seen working closely with Lagos State. Lagos State are far ahead of all the other states in the sense that for some reason in history, they were forced to actually get their act together as regards planning infrastructure, fiscal discipline, and all that. You know, remember when they were denied
the local government funds.
Yeah, exactly. So, and Lagos State recognizes the fact that arguably what is coming to the Lekki axis, right, is arguably going to transform the economy, not only of the state, but of the country. Because a lot of new, huge technology is coming there.
Absolutely.
I mean, you've heard about the SPM,
Yes.
right? A lot of people haven't even seen that, but it's almost, I mean, there are about 3 SPMs. An SPM is a facility that resides offshore, right? So it's actually been built, there's the last one, built 8 miles into the ocean, and it's being fed, right, by pipes, right, bringing in produce. So you're not even going to see, instead of tankers,
Yeah.
you know, you're just going to see pipes. Huge investments like that are going on. And all this is in recognition of the fact that what is going on there is going to transform the economy of the place. As a matter of fact, there's a wider plan to contain that area, work, live, play. So you're going to find out that people that work in that area would have very little cause to commute.
To come out.
Yeah? So that also is another strategy.
That's sounding like Dubai.
Yes,
you know.
that's also
When you
another
just-
strategy.
yeah.
So there's a lot of initiatives going on, but money. So we're managing, we're struggling, but I'm happy with the commitment of the government, and the governor has kept his hand very steadily on the steering wheel, and I just wish him strength.
Doctor, the question of cost, I know that we're running
We're
out
out
of
of
time,
time.
you know, but just a quick one before we leave. The question of cost, I mean, if you look at what the Nigerian Railway Corporation is saying, they made 1.6 billion or so, you know, in the past year.
Yes.
But then what is required is like, you know, 60-something billion, etc. If you juxtapose that with unforeseen incidents like the NSAS that happened, you know, last year, you know, mainly essentially, you know, around your area, you know, the number of buses burnt, you know, I mean, the court in Lagos have still not recovered, you know, from what was lost. How do you think that the government on the one hand, and then the citizens for whom this infrastructure development is meant for, should begin to see and own, you know, these things as theirs, so that you don't think that because I disagree with Sanwo-Olu, or I disagree with Buhari, or I disagree with Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, you know, let's burn everything down, you know, whereas it comes back to the people.
Absolutely. I remember when we started talking, I mentioned that who are we building this infrastructure
Exactly,
for?
that's where you
right?
start from, yeah.
And there's a need for education, right? Citizens must recognize that every road, every power station, every toll gate, every water plant ultimately belongs to them. I am an advocate for tolling. It might not be a very popular,
Really?
yes, I'm a big advocate for tolling, only because I understand the realities of financing major capital projects. And I know that somebody must pay for the use and the sustainability of any asset you put down. Somebody must pay for it, right? And it's the users. If you go all over the world, even in communist countries,
Absolutely,
you
you're
pay
right.
toll.
You're right.
You know, but because we have a culture deep in history of freebies, an entitlement, you know. So I think, you see, this is why I say it has to be an interministerial effort. So the Ministry of Information, for example, should be, or whatever ministry is involved
Advocacy.
in. Advocacy. You know, let the public understand that this asset belongs to you. I mean, if you destroy it, you're going to suffer for it.
Your taxes.
It's your taxes that's going, and pay your taxes as well.
There's that too.
Because you can't complain that there's no road, There's no this. If you're not paying taxes, I mean, the tax. If you go to Lagos State Internal Revenue, you'll be aghast. You know, at the register compared with the 20-something million population of Lagos State. I bet you they don't have up to 2 million people on there.
At all. It is pretty similar to what even the FRS is saying.
Yes.
44 million Nigerians paying, more than 50 million not even in the net at all. But, I mean,
so there should be a lot of advocacy.
Absolutely. Well, definitely. I'd assume it's a situation. I always hear people say, it's either you pay on the front end or you pay on the back end, but you're going to pay.
You pay anyway.
Somehow.
You pay anyway.
Somehow. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Dr.
Thank you,
Sodade.
Femi.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much.